You're listening to Breaking the Silence on the Fight the Lies Radio Network. Welcome to Breaking the Silence. Tonight, I want to talk about conspiracies and fear, and not so much any particular conspiracy that you may or may not have heard, but just the idea in and of itself. And I'm going to preface all of this by saying, and I'm going to date myself here, I've been delving into all things conspiratorial for the better part of 25 years. I first sort of had my eyes and my mind open to the notion that there may be conspiracies going on around us way back in, I think it was 1989 when the film They Live by John Carpenter came out. And that movie, it was basically the main character finds himself in this city that's sort of fallen into chaos and a lot of homeless people and all of that, living in tent cities. And he sort of notices these broadcasts that seem to break in over the TVs, and someone's trying to tell people, hey, wake up, they're all around you. These things are going on and you don't even see them. And then he ends up finding the place where they're doing these pirate broadcasts from, and he finds this sort of enigmatic box of sunglasses and puts a pair on, and then suddenly in the midst of that, all chaos breaks loose. The police start raiding everyone, arresting people, beating them. And finally he puts the sunglasses on and he sees that some people aren't what they appear to be. They're essentially aliens. And he starts noticing billboard signs and magazines and money and people on television, and all these things have hidden messages in them, like signs would say procreate and sleep and all those sorts of things, obey, all that. Anyways, I saw this movie. I was like 17, and it just really, really blew me away. And it got me to thinking about the world around us and the things that we see, the things that we're told. And anyone who really sort of pulls their head up out of the sand has to think, with all the things that are happening in the world today that have been happening for a very long time, that there are things that we're not being told. And there are things that we're being told that just don't quite add up. And then sometimes they're just too convenient. I mean, let's take the most well-known conspiracy in our modern time, 9/11, and the very steel structure of the building they claim melted and collapsed perfectly on its own footprint, purely from jet fuel burning. Never mind the fact that said jet fuel, at the temperature it burns at, cannot get nowhere near hot enough to melt metal. Even if it did, for all of the structure to melt simultaneously in sync in the perfect timing for that building to collapse in and on itself without any sort of tipping, without any sort of imperfection, it's ridiculous. And people who really are thinking about it have a very valid reason to question that official narrative. I mean, after all, demolition teams set up buildings to be taken down, and it takes them months to pull it off. And even when they do take those months, many times they don't come down properly. There have been some noteworthy news stories about that over the years, where the buildings went sideways. They just did not come down right. People were killed, yada, yada, yada. Anyways, my point is not to talk about 9/11, but my point is that is one crazy or delusional or wrong to look at that and question it? I mean, really what it calls to is the term in psychology called cognitive dissonance. And that simply says that when a person is faced with an event or a statement or a fact that conflicts with their reality, it causes this inner turmoil, and they are almost paralyzed to respond in a way that would conflict with what they believe to be true, this world, this what some would call fantasy that exists around us. So we should question things. We should really look at all things that are given to us with a healthy bit of skepticism. But that's really where we're going to begin here. What is healthy skepticism and what is merely fear? Because as being one who's been studying this sort of thing for many years, I fell down the rabbit hole, and throughout the 90s when we were first just getting dial-up internet access, man, I was on there and I was researching so many things. And then we all had the X-Files in the 90s, which, put a lot of this thought out there. And then we had 9/11 happen, and everyone who had been looking at this sort of thing immediately started questioning it. I mean, anyone who's familiar with history, if you go back and you look at events such as the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which initiated the Vietnam War, which was that essentially one of our ships got attacked by the Viet Cong, but then it turned out that it really didn't. And the entire reasoning for us getting into that conflict was false. Whether the powers to be knew it or not, could have been an honest mistake, maybe not. I mean, we have things like World War II, and people have called into question the Pearl Harbor attack. Mm-hmm. And how much did we know and when did we know it? And some have presented the theory that we knew to some reasonable degree that there was going to be an attack, but we allowed it because we wanted to get involved in the conflict for, all sorts of speculative reasons. I'm not even going to go into that. Point being is that those who've been looking at these sorts of things historically started looking at 9/11 and things that have followed and questioned them. And again, I think it's a reasonable thing to do. Now, there are people both on the, as we say, secular side and people on the religious side who would consider themselves researchers of conspiracies. I hate the term conspiracy theorist simply because, well, it's been used as such an attack on people who would call to question anything. Back in the 70s, there was this decision, and while I'm at a loss for the information right now, and I hate presenting things as facts here and not having the information to back them up. This is what happens when you just sort of do an off-the-cuff recording without any sort of script or anything. I'm just talking here. Been at work all day, and this is just something I've been going over in my head for a couple weeks now as something I wanted to talk about. So please forgive me if I don't have everything laid out here. But there was a political figure back in the 70s who came up with the idea and presented it to others that, hey, as a way to sort of combat these sorts of thoughts getting out there, let's coin the term conspiracy theory or conspiracy theorist and use that as a insult, essentially. I mean, today we have these terms that they always add the on the end, like truther or birther or any other number of things with the on the end. And they're really insulting. I mean, they're insulting intellectually. They're insulting in a way that calls to question one's integrity, one's sanity. And really, this is the sorts of things we see in the mainstream media that many of us who do look at these sorts of things, we consider the mainstream media to be it's nothing more than a mouthpiece for the powers to be. I mean, after all, here in America, after regulations ended in the 80s and 90s on how many media outlets a corporation could own, now we've boiled it down to 6 major corporations that own virtually every media outlet in America. Well, at least the mainstream ones, TV and radio and so forth. Never mind crazy government conspiracies. Never mind any of that stuff. If one simply thinks about the fact that you have 6 massive corporations that own all these media outlets, don't you think it's going to stand to reason that they're going to all be talking about the same thing in the same way, don't you think it's going to stand to reason that they're going to have certain agendas, certain goals that they're looking toward, and they're going to make sure those things happen with the tools that they are providing? These news broadcasters and such that you watch on TV, and you take what they say as some sort of honest, sincere truth. I mean, what tells you that they are trustworthy? What tells you that they're telling you the truth? I mean, again, when one starts to question that, they usually end up experiencing this cognitive dissonance, and most people turn away from even questioning it at that point because it's a lot more comfortable just to go on with the way things are. And after all, what are you going to do about it? And that sort of brings me to the point, or one of the points that I'm sort of feeling that I should get to with this entire topic is, what are you going to do about it? Look, I believe many of these things have been happening in the world around us for a great amount of time. Personally, I believe it goes back to ancient times. I mean, having a biblical worldview, I believe that it goes back to really pre-flood, this chain of conspiracy that goes throughout history. And knowing that, though, I had to question myself. What am I going to do about it? What's the worth in me knowing these things? I mean, let me tell you, I'm not going to go into any sort of details. I'm not going to name names or the event, but there was a nationally known event that occurred, well, let's just say in the past 15 years, that I had personal involvement in, and we'll just leave it at that. And it is one of those events that I myself and others have looked at and said, you know, there's something more that was going on there. There was something more that transpired than what we're being told. And it followed a very particular narrative that I've seen time and time again since. But my point being is that when that happened, when I was sort of involved in that, and trust me, it was in a rather limited way. I wasn't personally involved in this event, not directly anyways, but I saw for myself real evidence, because I was personally connected, that these things are true to some extent. And I did do my part in trying to, well, give the information that I personally had to try to do some good out of the situation. And at the end of the day, I never will know, I certainly don't now, what came of it all. I know what happened with the individuals involved, but I don't know if what I did made a difference. I don't know really if it stopped some plan that was in motion or if it was just expected. I don't know. And the thing is again, what are you going to do about it? I mean, we talk about things like, well, people use the term New World Order. I mean, presidents have used that term. The most noteworthy was George Bush Sr. right before the invasion of Iraq. And that's when they got on everyone's radar. This was right after I had saw that movie, They Live, and I had read a book called The New World Order. And I mean, it was just, it was shocking. You know, these were the things that early on opened my eyes. And really, I've never doubted since that there's truth to these things. But there are so many of these things that we all hear about all the time. There comes a point where it all becomes extremely confusing between real events, between speculations, between, well, what may be disinfo purposefully put out there, and then in between, well, to be honest, ravings of lunatics. I mean, because there are people who see these things, who question the world around us, and they, whether they were born that way or they just came to be that way through circumstances, or they just can't emotionally deal with things, they go crazy with the conspiracy topic. And they come up with all kinds of things, like if anyone's heard of the whole reptilian theory, or the latest fad, the flat earth theory. You know, somehow every world government, every agency in the world is hiding from us the fact that the world is really flat, and that supposedly the Bible backs it up. And you have to be simple about it. You have to be logical about it and say, what would be their goal for hiding that? What would be their reason? I mean, I have not really listened to it too much. I've listened to enough of it. I really don't want to listen to much any more of it because, to be honest, I consider it foolishness and I consider it madness and distraction. And ultimately, I wonder if it's actually one of those bits of disinfo that have been seeded out there, both to discredit the ones who would talk about it, but more importantly, to discredit the Bible, to discredit God. Forget people. When you're putting forth this thing and then saying the Bible backs it up and that the conspiracy, this is what they would say, that the reason they're hiding it, the reason why they're faking satellite data and everything else is because they want to discredit the Bible. They don't want people to know because this, and it's like, is it really that plausible that every government, every agency in the world, every form of media in the world would be in on this lie to hide the fact that the earth is flat in order to discredit the Bible? And let me tell you, there's a lot less expensive ways that they could do that and that they are doing it. And I see this sort of madness. Let me stop myself. I've sort of unplugged from monitoring these sorts of things for a few years now. As I recall, probably about 2009, 2010, I started thinking about this, and I started thinking about it from a biblical view. And when we go to the book of Revelation and it talks about the woman who rides the beast, and it describes her having this cup in her hand that all the peoples of the earth are drunk on. And others had expressed this, and I had my own thoughts on it. It says that that cup is full of her iniquities, full of her lies, all these sorts of things. And if that could be symbolic in part of these sorts of things that we're talking about, these conspiracies, and however many of them are just disinfo. And if we, in constantly looking at it, constantly consuming it, are we ourselves becoming maddened on it? Are we becoming drunk on it? I mean, again, what's the point of it? What's the goal? What's the end result of it? Now, as someone who would say they follow Yeshua, Jesus, isn't our primary goal supposed to be to tell others about him? And as he said himself, make disciples of them, teach them, guide them in his ways and the ways of the word. But if we are merely going to those people and telling them that, these various things are going on in the world, and I'm not going to mock them because I believe a lot of them. But if we go to them in this fear and this anger and this hysteria, telling them these things, what is it going to achieve? Well, I suspect that some people who do that expect that it's going to somehow get them to wake up and, well, some turn to God and others would hope that they would wake up and go against the conspiracy. And I think this is why I think it's such a flawed thing, because it distracts us from what we are supposed to be doing as followers of Yeshua. And I'm going to speak from this point of view for a little while. I tried on this show. I try to maintain a balance. I want to talk to you guys who are believers, and I want to share some things that I've learned with you and things, feelings, and thoughts I have about things that are going on. But I also want to be able to connect to you guys who don't believe. Maybe you don't believe in anything, or maybe you believe in somebody besides the God of Israel. So I never want to... And our goal is never to be a religious show, because honestly, I do not like that myself too often. I mean, depends on the context, depends on the approach, right? I mean, if someone gets up here talking in this Southern, and the Lord said you're going to go to hell. I mean, if people start approaching people that way, it's not going to do anything but turn you off. It turned me off, and it turns me off to this day. And again, it's funny that I said that, because the whole point is you're using fear, and fear is never going to make people run to God. People don't go to God because of fear. I mean, maybe to some extent, yes, you look at your life, you look at the world around you, and you say, that, wow, this is a terrible situation and I need help. And maybe you do go to the God for that reason. But that's not the primary reason. And it's not the reason he presented to us to go to him. I mean, we're not all sitting waiting for judgment from him that he's going to, crush us because we're so evil. He's saying that, man, this is what's going to happen. And I've come here to give you a way out. I've come here to throw you a life preserver and to pull you out. And yeah, while there are things that we should fear, we're not to be controlled by it. We're not to manage our lives based on fear. And we're not to go to others and try to coerce them with fear. Because you know what ends up happening? Inevitably, our human nature is that our fears become dulled over time. When they don't manifest themselves in reality, we just sort of start going upon our merry way. And if someone's merely come to God out of fear, then maybe they're not going to stay there. Now, I'm a firm believer that if you truly, truly come to him, if you truly accept him as your Messiah, you're not going to lose that. And, he says that no one will take those from his hand that he's been given. But, there's some debate. I've debated this myself. Does that mean that no one taking them includes me? Or does that mean just everyone else, that no one else can take me from his hand? I don't know. I'm not rock solid sure on that. But I do believe that if you truly, truly did commit to him with all of your heart, then you're not going to remove yourself either. But I suspect there's a good major portion of people who've been controlled by fear and only come to him through fear, maybe aren't really, truly, truly committed to him. And I'm not questioning anyone's salvation. I mean, only he knows. I mean, we do know by people's fruits, but we're still not, it's not our place to point our finger in their face. So, as a believer, why are you looking at conspiracies? Why are you talking about them too much? There's nothing wrong with talking about them to some extent. People should be woken up. For some people, it is part of the process. It's not the process, but it's part of the process. And yet we today can look all around us in the, what many people call the fringe Christian community. And we could see all of these people obsessed on these topics, whether it's flat earth or reptilians or masquerading as human beings or the Nephilim or right behind the corner or whatever it may be. It becomes the one and only thing that we're looking at and talking about. And I did it, man. I did it for a long time. If you've listened to any of our other shows, you know that. I mean, I did it, never mind before I was saved. After I got saved, I want to say 4 or 5 years I spent really just looking at all this stuff. And I don't want to seem too harsh on conspiracy theories and those who would examine them. Because, one of the things that happened with me, the place that we were going to, which, again, if you've listened to any of our previous shows, you know some of that history. And one of the things that should have been a big red flag for me was that early on going there, I heard all these statements embracing the official narratives for things like 9/11 and so forth. And it flew in the face of what I knew. What I knew. I'm not going to say I knew the absolute truth. I'm not going to say I know it now. But there are certain facts that were just flat out denied, certain logical things. I mean, again, when we talk about the structure of the World Trade Center, there's no way it melted by jet fuel. So beyond that, you could take your pick as far as speculations go as to who did it and why. But just the simple fact of not accepting the official narrative and saying, okay, there was something different than what we were told. Just that was just flat out denied, and it was mocked and everything else. And you know what I did? I buried it, and I made myself just go along with things. I made myself accept what they believed. And it wasn't until later on I sort of said, in many ways, this whole entire realm being one of them, I lost myself because, As I said, if you listen to any of the other shows we've done, we were in a cult. And that's what happens. That's one of the things that happens is you lose yourself and you're remolded into their image. So there were a great many things like questioning the world around me. And I mean, even more mundane things like punk rock. I love punk rock. And that was one of the things. I threw out every CD I had, never mind all kinds of other stuff. And I had to sort of like pick up the ashes after I got out and think, man, I threw away things I didn't really need to throw away. I mean, we're supposed to be discerning. We have to sort of look and, Paul says that all things are permissible, but not all things are acceptable. So while something may not be inherently sinful, it may not be good for me or you. So yeah, you're supposed to look at those things and listen to the Holy Spirit and weigh whether you should be consuming it or not. So for certain, there were things that you didn't need, but there were so many things that I had no reason to throw away, but I was brainwashed. But as I'm often prone to do, I'm rabbit trailing. After that time frame, though, that's when I sort of started questioning, well, why is it that I'm focused on these topics? Who have I been able to reveal the truth to? Who have I been able to wake up? What has it accomplished and what has it cost me? And I started looking at other people around me. I mean, you get the emails, you get the Facebook post, yada, yada, yada. There was like the comet, I think it was called Elenine, back a few years ago, and everyone was saying, these are Christians, mind you. And they're all saying, this is about to impact the earth. It's God's judgment, blah, blah, blah. Guess what? We're still here. It didn't happen. But this is all people were focused on for weeks and weeks and months. Hey, the blood moon thing, if you've heard about that, supposedly since 2012 and up till this year, every year it's supposedly we're going to have all these multiple blood moons, and they're supposedly linked to the biblical feast days. They supposedly take place visible from Israel. Well, guess what? None of them line up to those exact dates they claim. None of them are quite what we've been told, according to these proponents. They claim that certain times in history that certain calamities befell Israel, like the Holocaust and other events, that these blood moons occurred. But when you actually go back and look at the calendar and the times that they occurred, they weren't on the same days at all. Many of them weren't on the same weeks, not even the same months, just the same year. So then we were told, well, judgment's coming, these blood moons, Yeshua's going to return, all this stuff. And here we are at 2016, and none of them have happened yet. I could go on and on. There's been so many things. There are podcasters I used to listen to, and every other week it was the world's coming to an end, and they're hiding these things from us, and this is going to happen, and that's going to happen. And I finally got sick of it because, I was one of those guys. I was stockpiling supplies. And, I think we should do that because we can have natural disasters happen at any time. We can have any number of things happen at any time. The grocery stores only have a 3-day supply of food at best. You might only have a few hours if you live in a very populated area like I do. And so, yeah, it's wise to have supplies on hand. But man, you get to the point where it's just totally beyond the pale. I had so much stuff, freeze-dried stuff stocked up, blah, 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 and other certain items in order to defend myself, which, again, I think is a wise thing to do. The Bible never said, do not kill. It says, do not murder. Yeshua himself told his disciples, hey, if you don't have a sword, go sell some stuff and get one, right? We're not supposed to go out aggressively, proactively, offensively, and use those weapons, but we are supposed to use them defensively. We are supposed to defend the ones we love, the ones around us. Anyone who tells you otherwise, well, not to sound cocky, but they're wrong. Are you going to sit and watch your family be slaughtered and think that God's going to be okay with that? And don't think you're doing him some honor by doing it. Anyways, I'm sorry for the rant. Look, the whole point being is that there are these things that come up that everyone hitches their wagon to, and they get consumed with fear about, whether they realize it or not, whether they will admit it or not. They're being controlled by fear. Fear isn't just this sort of feeling, this sort of like being scared as we sort of think of it. I wish I could come up with a better way of breaking that down, but this emotional, thing. Fear is essentially you making a choice, taking an action based out of, well, essentially trying to preserve either your own life or something in your life or something that you want or think you need. And you're going to take actions to try to ensure that, to secure it. I'm sorry, that's not Webster's Dictionary's version. I should have looked that up here and been fancy and read the official Webster's Dictionary definition of fear. But that is sort of it. I had a friend many years ago who said to me, I know he believes the Bible is a very good book and he believes in God. I'm not sure quite where he's at today, but best friend. And, I haven't seen him quite a few years. I've really missed the guy. But anyways, he had this theory he presented to me, and he said he believes that fear is the root of all evil, that we do so many actions out of fear that lead to evil. He would say that one who murders somebody is really doing it because of fear, because they fear losing something or not getting something or whatever. I don't know. It's an interesting concept, and I just sort of nodded my head to him when he presented it to me and just sort of like, yeah, okay. Yeah, that's cool. But as I thought about it over the years, he's much more correct than I thought. And since then, I've been able to tell him that, fortunately. But I see us as believers, especially, never mind the rest of the world, they're totally the ones who aren't just sort of having their senses dulled by whether it's a drug or entertainment or whatever. They're running around in fear left and right, especially as the days and weeks and months move forward. Fear of terrorism, fear of lone wolf shooters, fear of this presidential nominee or that presidential nominee, fear of the current administration, fear of whatever. But us as believers, we're not any better because we are probably even worse in a lot of ways. We get caught up in all this stuff. We got to stop the gays. We got to stop this administration. We got to stop the political candidate that's running this coming year. And we're doing all these things, and our lives, our minds, our souls, our actions, our words, everything are just totally guided by them. And I've just totally tuned out of the whole political process right now, because never mind, it's disgusting anyways. Come on, if you haven't woke up by now to see that both political parties are working toward the same agendas, just merely packaging it a different way, voicing it in a different way, delivering it to you a different way, then you're not paying attention, because they are. Look at the past several administrations. Has anything changed? The things they say they're going to do, the things they say they're against, guess what? They do the exact same thing as the last administration did. They just do it in a different way. Our current leader said that he was going to end all these wars overseas and so forth. And we're going to end these wars of aggression and this discrimination against Islam. And okay, so the reasoning for wars against these terrorists ended, and as far as them being Islamic, the language changed and the desire for vengeance was no longer expressed as the reason, but now it's for humanitarian reasons, because we're so loving and caring and we're going to save these people. And guess what? We have more conflicts going on now than we did before. We're in more places and killing more people than we were before. And the world is that much crazier. Nothing's changed. And guess what? If your favorite political party gets in next administration, odds are it's not going to change then either. Because let me tell you something. Those of you who are out there who profess to follow the God of Israel, who profess to follow his Messiah, his son Yeshua, you're not supposed to be doing this. You're not supposed to be looking at these mere human beings who are as prone to failure and lying as the next person, and honestly way more so, not the least of which reasons are they're compromised, because in order to get into that position, guess what? They have to compromise everything. Even if they meant what they said when they were running, they're not going to be able to do it once they get in. And if they do, well, maybe they're another JFK. Who knows? But you focused on it, obsessing over it and fighting over it and going on these campaigns and all this stuff and watching the news religiously all the time. Where is that in the Bible? Where do you think God wants us to do that? Do you not think that he's capable of fulfilling his word, fulfilling the things that he said he would do? Do you not think that he's, well, as they say, in control? Or do you think that you've got to set up his kingdom for him? Are you of the dominionist philosophy? Guess what? I was part of that. The congregation that we were part of, the cult, it was completely dominionist. And we were going around our city, our state, our country, doing all these things, going on all these prayer marches, all these walks, engaging in all this ecumenical cross-spirituality partnerships. Well, first it's cross-denominational, then it becomes cross-spirituality. In other words, people who are following a different God because, hey, guess what? We got the same goals, or they have something we want. You know, my particular former leader, you know, he was obsessed with spiritual authority. And if he engaged in certain spiritual enterprises with other people who had that spiritual authority, he felt like he could get some of it for himself. So what, do you believe that? Do you think that that's what we're supposed to be doing? Where in God's word does he say to do that? Oh, I know you'll say that God told Adam that he had dominion over the earth. Well, guess what? First of all, that interpretation is woefully inadequate. We were placed here as caretakers. Go study the Hebrew. Go listen to some people who specialize in ancient Hebrew and what the Bible really said. But never mind that. Whatever authority he had, whatever dominion that we were given, we lost a good major portion of that when the fall happened. And we didn't just get it back when Yeshua came. He has a dominion. He has the authority. And when he was here on earth, he said, the kingdom of God is here amongst you. But he's not here on earth now. And we're not just here standing in his place either. He's coming back. And, you know, I'm sure you'll debate with me about that. Oh, well, we're here and he's put this call on us and blah, 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 yakety schmackety. But the thing is look at the Bible, read Revelation. The world does not get any better before he returns. It gets far, far worse. And any debate on that, any argument against that, guess what? You're arguing with the word of God. You're not arguing with me. You're not arguing with other people who take odds with this. You're arguing with what the word says. And you could twist it and contort it. And you could take sort of vague verses and bend them out of context. But can you do it without the vague verses? Can you do it without spiritualizing it and allegorizing it? Because guess what? There are so many things in plain sight. I mean, least of which is the anti-Messiah who comes along and starts killing everybody, right? All hell comes forth on earth. What do we think? That somehow we're going to make this utopia? Because guess what? That's what the occultists are trying to do. That's what the New Age is trying to do. That's what the globalists are trying to do. See, these people, all of them aren't necessarily Satan incarnate, evil, I worship Satan and I'm going to make human sacrifice, although there are those who do that, and they knowingly do it. Most of them, they think they're doing good. They think that they're serving God in some way, or if they don't believe in God, they think they're serving humanity, and they think they're going to make a better world. Now, of course, us as believers could see what they're doing and see it for what it is for the most part, at least in some way. But they think they're going to do the same thing as you dominionists think you're going to do. They think they are going to set up utopia here on earth, that they're going to make a better world for humanity to move forward and end all wars and all that stuff. Just like the John Lennon song, you know, Imagine, right? Well, even if you don't believe in God, even if you don't have a spirituality, you got to look at humanity, and we're not inherently good. Even if you want to say 99% of humanity is good, all it takes is 0.1% to have a Hitler and to lay the world to waste. So what are you going to do about that? I mean, are you going to have thought control? Are you going to get them before they come? I mean, well, really, that's about the only way you could propose doing it. And then who decides? As I said, I'm very prone to rabbit trails. And I didn't script this, although I never script my podcasts, so forgive me if it's a bad idea. I'm just trying to speak from the heart here. the simple message, I guess, that's on my heart to say here is you need to question yourselves, people. I need to question myself because guess what? I see myself doing it all the time. Are you living in fear? Are you making decisions based on fear? Whether that's because of a globalist agenda or whether it's because something in the media or whether it's a book or a movie. You know, people get caught up in this like Harry Potter's the devil or the pop music. They're all devil worshippers, which, you know, by the way, there's a great major portion of them that do either knowingly or unknowingly seem to be part of that. But what are they going to do against you, the believer? What impact are they going to have on your lives? Do you think that if you, as one who sincerely 100% believes in the Messiah and has been saved, do you think because you pick up that Harry Potter book and read it that somehow you're going to get a demon? I mean, really? Never mind the fact that the author professes to be a Christian, at least, whether she really is or not, I don't know. And she claims that she purposefully put Christian allegories into it. I mean, never mind that. That's not even my soapbox to stand on, but it's one of those things I see out there. I've seen it since the 80s, man. I was into metal and punk rock back in the 80s, and we were all called devil worshippers. And you know, now you look at him and it's so laughable compared to some things today. It seems really tame. And, you know, Dungeons and Dragons back in the 80s, that was another thing that'd give you a demon. You know, you name it. I mean, I've heard it all. And it's like, what has changed? What did you accomplish by your obsessing people on these things? And when you go to people as a believer and you go to people who aren't believers and you tell them you can't do this and we're going to get rid of this because it's evil, what do you think that says to that person? You know what it says to that person? I'm right and you're wrong, and I'm going to make your choices for you, and I'm going to control you, and I represent God, and that means I'm right. And guess what? To that person, that says, if there is a God, then he's that way too. Because, you know, we're not put here, we're not a study of the Hebrew in the beginning, in Genesis. If you study the Hebrew, it does not say we are made in the image of God. If you literally translate it, it says we are imagers of God. That's what the Hebrew points to. And this is a simple truth that we already know, or we should know. We're here to image him, to represent him. We're here as diplomats. We're here as ambassadors. We're here to show his truth and his love and his care for others, to pull them up out of those places that they've sunken into, that they've fallen into. Because guess what? We all were. Many of us still are to some degree or another. We're all in a process. We're already saved. We're secured. But our redemption in this life, our mortal lives being saved, we're still all in the process. And we're all looking forward to his return to set all things right, to restore all things back to the way it was. And finally, there was another point that I really wanted to get to. And that is when we talk about the conspiracies and we talk about those behind them. We talk about, well, the globalists and the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission and the Illuminati. That's a big one, right? Everybody's heard of that these days, right? When I first started researching this stuff, nobody had heard of the Illuminati. And I was completely like, man, those are the ones that are behind it. That group back in the French Revolution that started it and caused the slaughter. And they continued on and infiltrated Freemasonry and transformed it and all that stuff. And they continue on to this day and so forth and so on. That was what I believe. That was the top of the pyramid, man. Well, guess what? That's not the beginning of any of it. It all goes back to the Nakash, the serpent in the garden. It all goes back to that infiltration that happened. It all goes back to the tower after the flood in Nimrod. This continues like a chain throughout history. And it's not mere humanity. That's the point. To those of you out there who aren't believers in the God of Israel, and you question and you talk about these things that are going on in the world, and you get others who are skeptics that come to you and they say, oh, why would they do that? Why would they kill all these innocent people? Why would they want to do this and that? Why would they want to control us? And what do you say to them? Well, I mean, I know there's several sort of different explanations people will come up with that, well, they're elite and they believe they're better and they're into transhumanism and they're going to leave the rest of us behind or whatever it may be. Or they're just insane. Maybe this is the kind of things you grasp at. And those of you who are believers in the God of Israel, you'll say, well, they serve Satan, blah, blah, blah. Maybe you understand that, but do you really understand it? And do you really see it that way? Do you really process it that way on a day-by-day basis? Or are you looking at these politicians and these groups, these individuals, these organizations around the world? Are you looking at them as the great evil? Are you focusing on a certain president that we have right now as the one who has to be stopped? Paul said, we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities. The Benai Elohim of Genesis, the sons of God, those who, for lack of better terms, others call angels. Those are the powers. Those are the principalities. Those are the ones operating behind the scenes who've been doing it from the very beginning. They're the ones pulling the puppet strings. They're the ones who have the goals to destroy humanity, to enslave humanity, to rape humanity, like they've done from the very beginning. That is the goal. That is the motivation. That is why these people do these things. And guess what? Just like I said earlier, a lot of those people, they think they're serving God. Even if they wouldn't articulate it that way, they think they're doing good. They think they're saving humanity. I mean, I once believed humanity was destined for the stars, and maybe one day we will be. Maybe God has that in store for us. I don't know. In a different future, not done by mere human mechanizations. Maybe. But I used to think that, and I thought, if we could just set things right, we could go to the stars and look at all this waste that we have and our petty conflicts and all that. I once believed that. Maybe you believe that too. It's a noble thing to hope for. I mean, I'm a sci-fi geek. I loved Star Wars, Star Trek, you name it. Favorite science fiction series of all time, Babylon 5, if you've never seen it. It's a work of art, and it will move you to tears. Watch it. Besides the point, we as believers, you out there who are listening, do not focus on these human beings, just like you should not focus on mere human beings as your saviors, whether you cognitively think of it that way or not, whether it's at the forefront of your conscience or not. Maybe you're focusing on them as your saviors, but at the same time, do not focus on mere human beings as the great enemy. Because they're not. It's all a shell game throughout history. I mean, we have our figures today. We can go back through the Freemasons. We can go back through the Illuminati. We can go back through the Rosicrucians, the Jesuits. We can go back through the things happening behind the scenes in ancient Rome, to Greece, to Babylon, and you will never find the source if you're only looking at human beings. The source is not human. And we as believers need to remember that and strip away all the confusion. Just lay down the confusion. Listen, you're not going to die if you let it go. If you just say, you know what? I can set this down. I can stop looking at it. I can just look to God and look to His Word and see what the future holds and see the conspiracy. Because trust me, the Bible does say there is a great conspiracy going on. If you believe the Bible, then you believe that. But also, if you believe the Bible, then you know you can't stop it. So stop obsessing about it. And those of you who aren't believers, I would just say, well, I would just point out the very same thing. Give the Bible a read. Just look at it. Don't look at it through religious eyes. Don't look at it through various denominational eyes. Don't even pick it up and try to find some guide to tell you what this means or that means. Because let me tell you, those of us who are believers, who've been reading it for a while, I've been, quote, saved. I want to find a better term for referring to that than saved, because then it necessitates a lot bigger of an explanation. I sort of attempt to do that in the first episode of this show. If you want to go back and listen to it, certainly welcome to. But anyways, even those of us who are saved, like me, it's been 11 years now, we tend to get this whole entire distorted lens that we look at the Bible through. And there are a lot of things in there that are strange, that aren't natural, that aren't, well, they don't conform to normal human agreed upon facts. Like, for example, this whole set of events that are described in Genesis chapter 6, and these beings called the B'nai Elohim that come down and mate with human beings and create this offspring called the Nephilim. Religion, about 1700 years ago, decided that was just too crazy, and we were going to say that, no, those were human beings who did that. Those were the sons of Cain, and they mated with the daughters of this man named Shem, and that's what that's all about. But how do you get these things called Nephilim, or as often translated giants, out of that? It doesn't make any sense. But if you try to force it through a lens, well, you can convince yourself it makes sense, I suppose. I think it's a fine example of fear once again. You're fearing the unknown, fearing rejection of your doctrinal belief, and you don't look at the truth. So if you're an unbeliever, just pick up the Bible. Sure, there's nothing wrong with listening to a podcast here or there, or doing some internet searching a little bit when you're not sure about something, but just pick it up and look through it, man. It doesn't mean you're committing to anything. It just means you're researching. If you have a love for research, it'll be an enjoyable experience. And let me tell you, contrary to popular opinion, my God does not condemn people. It's not a matter of, if you don't accept him, you're being destroyed, you're being sent to hell. It's the wrong way to look at it. It's a matter of, we're all in that path, because that's the path of entropy. That's the course that the universe is on. And he is piercing into this universe and saying, this is what's happening, and I'm offering you a way out. I'm putting my hand out to you. I don't care what you've done. Just believe me. That's all he's saying. That's all he's saying. And it doesn't mean living this life, this miserable life full of all these rules and everything. Yeah, there's simple things that we shouldn't do, that we absolutely shouldn't do. And the thing is you don't have to be a Bible believer to not want to do those things or not want others to do them to you. I mean, do you want someone to come into your house and rape your wife or murder you or steal from you or any number of other things? If you have a child, do you want your child to dishonor you? I mean, come on, these things aren't unreasonable. And there's just 10 of them, for crying out loud. But even at that, even if you've done those things, he still can wipe that clean. You might have a penalty in this life, in this universe, but as far as eternity goes, there's no penalty. Anyways, that's all I'm going to say on that. I'm not going to beat you over the head with it. Not even sure if any of you are listening. I hope you are, because I want to be someone that you can listen to. I want to be someone who is rational. I want to be someone that can say to you, I've been down that road. I've looked down the paths. I've read the books. I've been to the website, watched the movie, and this has been my experience. This is what I've seen. And if you're interested, then I'd love to talk more. That's all I'm saying. And I'm probably, feeling a little more harsh against my fellow believers today, and that's really where this was aimed. And I don't mean to offend any of you. I don't mean to bash any of you, because odds are, where many of you are at, I was there as well. So I'm sort of saying a bit of the same. You know, I've been there, done that. I've seen that. Bought the shirt, worn the shirt, given other people the shirt. You know, it's, at the end of the day, you just have to ask why. Why are you doing it? What's it matter? What's it achieve? And if it doesn't achieve that goal that we've been told we should all be looking to, then maybe you should let it go. If you can't look at it without being able to let it go, then you shouldn't look at it to begin with. So thank you guys for bearing with me listening to this. I thought it might be just a quick half hour, but I don't think I'll ever manage a half hour. I really do appreciate it. I appreciate you guys continuing to check out our show. It's very encouraging as we're getting more clicks of the mice on our various shows. It's encouraging to see that and to see a few more approvals of what you're hearing. I'm going to keep saying this because, man, I've been listening to podcasts for about 10 years now, and I never go to the websites. I never go to the social media pages. I never go to iTunes or any of that. I've got a podcasting app on my Android that I just plug in my feeds into, and I download them and listen to them at my leisure. And I've never really offered feedback. I've only really started doing it since I've been podcasting now because I realize how valuable that is. And we're going to keep sort of reminding you guys of this, no guilt intended, but we really would appreciate you going to our various pages, whether it's our main website, www.ftlradio.net, or whether it's our Facebook page, Fight the Lies Radio, or whether it's our Twitter page, Fight the Lies Radio, or whatever avenue it may be, our YouTube page. And just, giving us a like, giving us a comment, giving us a rating, a review, our iTunes page, any of that stuff, man, it'd be really appreciated because number one, it lets us know that what we're talking about speaks to someone, means something to someone. Number two, it gets the word out there. The way these things are constructed, the way they're implemented, the more ratings and reviews you have, the higher up you go in the listing. So therefore, more people are more likely to see it and be able to listen. And well, to be honest, we'd love for more people to listen. But also, if you give us a little bit of feedback, some comments, whatever, we want to hear that. We want to hear if what we're talking about makes sense and if there are thoughts you have on it. We're kind of still learning and growing here. And, man, maybe this will be something I'll look back in a few weeks or months from now and think, God, that sounded awful. I was just really rabbit trailing and going crazy there, I'm still learning here. And so the more feedback I get, it's data for me to improve the show. And, topics, suggestions are very welcomed. I'm sort of get different things that float around my mind, like this topic here that you're listening to. And I sort of weigh them out and wait for sort of confirmations or more information. So any ideas, if it sounds good to me, I maybe a good likelihood I'll do a show on it, especially if I think enough people want me to talk about it, because the whole point of this show is to reach out to you people out there and share things with you and try to help you. So into my rant on appealing for the aforementioned things. Thank you guys once again for listening, and please everyone take care out there, and God bless. Breaking the Silence is a production of Fight the Lies Ministries. Visit us at ftlradio.net. This program is released under Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Intro and outro music by Kevin MacLeod at incompetech.com.